Captain Sarah Mitchell stared at the distress beacon flickering on her console, her coffee growing cold in the recycled air of the Yune's Meridian's bridge. 3 days out from Earth, and they'd picked up a signal that made no sense. A Zelthari transport vessel, life support failing, drifting in the void between star systems. Commander Hayes, what's the status? Sarah asked, her fingers already dancing across the navigation controls. Marcus Hayes looked up from his station, his dark eyes troubled. Ma'am, the translation's coming through now. You need to hear this yourself. The mechanical voice of the universal translator crackled through the speakers. Cargo abandoned. Economic burden unsustainable. May the void grant mercy. Sarah's jaw tightened. Cargo? What kind of cargo needs life support? Running bioscans now, said Dr. Emily Chen from the science station. A moment later her face went pale. Captain, I'm reading approximately 50,000 life signs. Humanoid, small, mostly juvenile based on the mass readings. Children. The word came out as barely a whisper. Marcus nodded grimly. The Zelthari Concordat had a ward species, blue-skinned, four-armed, highly empathic. Their homeworld was consumed by their sun going supernova 6 months ago. The Concordat took in the survivors, but decided they were too expensive to keep. Sarah finished, her voice hard as steel. She slammed her hand on the COM panel. All hands, this is the captain. Emergency rescue operations. I want every shuttle prepped, every cargo bay cleared, every spare bunk ready. We're about to have company. Captain Lieutenant Jackson spoke up from tactical, his southern drawl heavy with concern. We're a deep space survey vessel. We've got supplies for a crew of 200 for 6 months. 50,000 refugees will survive. Sarah interrupted. Because that's what we do. That's what humans have always done. We don't abandon children to die in the dark. The rescue operation began within the hour. The Zelthari ship was a nightmare, a massive cargo hauler with failing environmental systems, flickering lights, and the acrid smell of fear. Sarah led the first team aboard, her magnetic boots clanking against the metal deck. What she found would haunt her forever. Thousands of small blue faces stared at her. From the darkness, their large eyes filled with terror and resignation. They huddled together in the cargo holds, their forearms wrapped around each other, some barely old enough to walk. The Zelthari had left them with 3 days of water and no food, knowing full well the ship's life support would fail long before rescue arrived. Hey there, Sarah said softly, kneeling before a small girl who couldn't have been more than 5 in human years. My name's Sarah, we're here to help. The child looked at her with those enormous violet eyes, then reached out with one small hand. Sarah took it, feeling the trembling fear in that tiny grip, and made a silent vow. Over the next 18 hours, the crew of the Meridian worked a miracle. Shuttles ran constantly, ferrying children from the dying Zelthari vessel. Every crew member became a caretaker. Engineers converted cargo bays into dormitories. The medical team worked around the clock treating malnutrition and dehydration. The ship's cook, a burly man named Tom Rodriguez, somehow stretched their supplies to feed an army, muttering in Spanish as he worked magic with protein synthesizers and creativity. Captain, we're at 312% capacity, Marcus reported, exhaustion evident in his voice. Environmental systems are strained. We've got kids sleeping in the hallways, the gym, even the shuttle bays. Sarah looked around the bridge, where 3 Valon children were currently napping under Emily's station, curled up against each other. And, Marcus smiled wearily, and we've got room for more. The last shuttle's bringing in the final group now. When every child was aboard and the Zelthari ship was empty, Sarah gave the order to set course for Earth. The journey that should have taken 3 days stretched to 10 as they ran the life support systems at minimum to conserve resources. The crew went on half rations without complaint. Sleep shifts were reduced. Every waking moment was spent caring for the children. But something remarkable happened during that journey. The Velone children began to smile. Their empathic abilities, which had been dampened by trauma, slowly awakened. They felt something from their human rescuers they'd never felt from the Zelthari: unconditional acceptance, love without transaction, protection without price. Lieutenant Amanda Foster, a weapons specialist who'd always considered herself too rough around the edges for kids, found herself with a constant shadow, a 6-year-old Velon boy named Krill who followed her everywhere, mimicking her stance, her walk, even her habit of cracking her knuckles. Dr. Chen discovered she had a talent for bedtime stories, her scientific precision transforming into vivid tales of Earth's oceans and forests that left dozens of children wide-eyed with wonder. Even the gruff Tom Rodriguez found himself teaching cooking to a group of teenagers, his kitchen becoming a haven of warmth and the smell of improvised meals that somehow tasted like hope. When the Meridian finally limped into Earth orbit, every major news network was waiting. The story had reached Earth days before humans' ship, designed for 200, carrying 50,000 refugee children through space on hope and determination. Sarah stood on the bridge, watching Earth grow larger on the viewscreen, a small Velen girl named Lyra sleeping in her arms. She'd been the first child Sarah had touched on that dying ship, and in the past 10 days, the attachment had become unbreakable. "Ma'am, Earth Command is asking about our status and about adoption proceedings," Marcus said quietly. "Apparently, every family on Earth wants to help." Sarah looked around at her crew, exhausted, underfed, running on fumes, and saw them smiling. Each one had bonded with these children. Each one had already made the decision she was about to make official. "Tell Earth Command we'll need 50,000 families," Sarah said, "and put my name down for one." Lyra stirred in her arms, looked up with those violet eyes, and whispered her first human words, "Home." Sarah felt her heart break and mend simultaneously. "Yes, sweetheart, home." The Zelthari had abandoned them because they saw only cost. Humanity had saved them because they saw only children. In the end, that difference defined everything. 50,000 orphans had been left to die in the darkness of space. 50,000 children found families on a blue world that opened its arms without hesitation, because that's what humans do.